to be secure, that we have our family around us, we have money, we have health, we have everything. And with blessings, sometimes we're lucky. Quite often we're lucky, like my parents, you know, they're quite lucky, they live quite a long life. They're 70 or 80 or whatever. And nothing too bad happens to them. I mean, bad things still happen. So they live their whole life and nothing too bad happens to them. But still they reach the age of 70, 80, then they have to really consider their mortality. You know, it's not too far away now. That's the greatest wonder, isn't it? That we don't embrace our mortality, because it's so certain, but we just think, oh, don't worry about that. It's a long way off. You know, when it happens, someone close to us dies. We feel the pain, we try and put some distance between it. Same thing happened to the Buddha. He lived, sorry, Samuel told me not to do this, going lots of stories that confuse everyone. So the Buddha's there. He lives in this marries the wonderful Yashoda. Beautiful life he has. Then he begins to wonder what's outside this lovely protected place that I live in. He becomes curious, because the mind's so curious. Like Queen Kunti was so curious. How does this mantra work? Pandora was so curious, wasn't she? What's in the box? Must know what's in the box. So Siddhartha, the great prince, he's so happy he has Yashoda. They have a son, I think, or daughter, I'm not sure. Everything's perfect. But you want to know what's outside the walls. They do go outside the walls, but when they do, everything's carefully orchestrated, so everyone looks happy and healthy and everything painted, it looks nice. Now he says, take me out to see the real India. And those of you who've been to India, you know what the real India, it's real. When you go there, it is. You see it all. It's quite shocking at first, because it really brings poverty. You see poverty. You see people are sick. You know, you see people who die. It's what you see when you go there now. You see it all. And yet within that, there's so much life and so much spirit. So he goes out. He's never seen an old person. The first night he goes out, his friend takes him out, and they meet an old person. He says, what's this? He said, this is someone who's very quite old, like 90, really, really old, something like that. He says, this is an old person. He says, what's an old person? He said, we all become old. He says, everyone becomes old. He says, what, you mean Yashoda will become old and I'll become old? And he goes back that night and it becomes to him, we've grown up knowing it. But to him it comes suddenly. His father's plan is unravelling rapidly because now the shock of it. He says, what do you mean I'm going to become old? The next night they go out, they see someone who's very sick. Says what this says, this is disease. Says what's disease? Says disease can happen any time. Normally happens when you're older, but it can happen when you're young, it can happen to a child. It can happen any moment. Disease can come and it can take away your life. Just like that. So again he comes home and he's just like thinking, you can't think of it all. The next night they go out, there's a dead body in a stretcher, taking it to the big cats for a cremation. He sees a lifeless body. He says, what's this? He said, this is a dead body. He says, what's a dead body? He says, we all die. One day you'll die. You only could live a long life, but you'll end up like this. And he goes back, and he's so shocked. The next night they go out, and he sees a person who somehow seems content and happy. And he says, who's this? Who's this person? He said, this is a person who knows. He says, what do you mean it's a person who knows? He said, this is a person who knows that God is in everything. He said, this is a person that knows that he may disease, that he may die, that people around him he loves are going to die. But he's happy. No, he's content in that knowledge because he knows that the soul is eternal. And he's not afraid himself. He's not afraid of that. And that's a person that knows it's comfortable in this life of suffering. And that's the greatest wonder for Yudhishthira. There aren't many. Yudhishthira was someone, he was like that. That's why he looked at the world and he was amazed. Because he knows, he's on the battle of here, Yudhishthira is sitting there as well. And he knows there's this great army opposite him. And he knows he may not survive, but he knows he'll just do his duty. Bhishma's on the other side as well. He knows the same thing. And all the number of beings that know that life isn't eternal, for human life, but the soul is eternal, that they can walk out of the body, go to a nice place, because they've done their good karma. So the Buddha's so affected by that. He thinks, that's what I want. And in that moment, he renounces his kingdom. The one thing his father didn't want to happen. And he tried so hard to stop it happening. But that's the one thing. He walks out and renounces the kingdom to contemplate, to become. Because he knows that is the great wealth. That is a great wealth, really. And that's how Krishna, that's why the Gita, because that's what the Gita tells you. When you read this, it tells you that. The first thing, Arjuna's on the battlefield. They're all there. The first few verses of the Gita you read in it. Dhritarashtra, there, the blind king, says, what happens when my sons and Pandu's sons meet on the battlefield? Then they go into description, what Duryodhana says, what Bhishma does, what Dronacharya does. Then the other side, they talk about the Pandavas, what they're doing. They're all there facing each other. All these characters are there. And then Arjuna just says, because they're quite disciplined about things, you know, there's lots of rules and regulations of being a great warrior. It wasn't just all out sort of, you know, rules sort of thing. There's lots of etiquette, if you like. So Arjuna says to Krishna, take me between the two armies. Let me see who's sided with Duryodhana. And he goes there and he sees Duryodhana, but then he sees Bhishma, who's like his grandfather, and he sees Dronacharya, who's his teacher, and he sees other people by circumstances end up on the wrong side, have to choose that side, and then he thinks, I can't do this. And that's the chapter 1.
That's the beginning.
That's the beginning. That's the chapter 1.
That's the beginning of the new beginning.
It's chapter 1. He has this great bow, the Gandharva bow, which is a great bow which is given to him by Lord Shiva. It's a magical bow. And he always looks after this bow, and he lets go of it. And he says to Krishna, I cannot fight. But then he says, please tell me what to do. And that's, Krishna tells him what to do. First of all, Krishna says, you're immortal, everyone's immortal, you can't die. It's a great truth that people just, they can't understand it. You know, they think they're human, they're going to die, and that's it. That's the end. But it isn't. It's just an episode, a wonderful episode. We've had all sorts of different episodes, short episodes, long, great episodes, terrible episodes. It's just an episode, and they'll go from one episode to the next. There's no need to worry. For Krishna's point of view, there's no need to worry. And then he says to him, but you're a great hero. Arjuna is the greatest hero. People look up to him. He says, if you don't do this, people think you're a coward. What could be worse? What could be worse than that when a person who's respected and loved by everyone so high is then seen as so low? What sort of life is that? He says, better to die here than have that. He says you'd be better off. And then he goes through, sorry, it's 18 chapters. But Drupadi is there, and they're pulling this great humiliation. She says, will no one help me? None of you men who say you're great, will none of you help me? Like that. And the greatest thing is, no one did anything. She's shocked. No one helps her. And they start pulling the wonderful cloth, tugging it, pulling it off her. And the only thing she can do is let go. And she says, Krishna, please help me. And a soul, probably all experienced some point where you just say, that prayer, isn't it, that comes, that moment of anguish, sometimes the deepest. But Krishna says the greatest life is when you don't rely on anguish to take you to the divine. You know, when you can do it through yoga and singing and wonderful things. So she prays to her, she just lets go, only Krishna can help me now. Only God can help me now. It's like that. I remember being in a car and he's heading for a huge accident. And I thought, my God, nothing can save me now. And he just has only one thing to do. Say, God, please help me. And somehow he survived. I remember that clearly, just thinking, there's moments between this collision. It's in this lorry going 80 kilometres, over 80 kilometres to like a wall. I wasn't driving, someone else was driving. And they hit some ice, the whole truck spins and just goes. I just see it then, going towards this wall, and I think, you know, your mind knows you can't survive. In an instant, you know you can't physically survive that. Somehow, we both get thrown out of the vehicle to the side. I remember just lying there thinking, my goodness, it's like a second life you give them. So Drupadi's there. She just prays to Lord Krishna. They're spinning around as they're pulling at the cloth. And then the great miracle is the cloth never ends. The cloth keeps coming, spinning round and round and round, until there's a huge pile of cloth. And the men who are pulling it are just exhausted. And then Dhritarashtra finally, someone comes. After all that, finally someone comes to her rescue. And it's the blind king's wife. She comes down. And she's, how can you do this to this? Can you do this to a woman? And she gives her two. She says, ask me for two things, whatever you want. So she just says, give me Pandavas have their kingdom back. You know, we have our lands back. Back to square one, basically. Then they leave, all of them leave. They've had quite a day, all of them. They're all back in there. They're all back to the beginning, basically, like nothing's happened. But they all feel like, well, we've really been through it, you know. Sometimes it's like that with families, isn't it? Even at Christmas. I don't know what it's like in Netherlands. People go home to their families for Christmas, and then it's only a few days with the family. All the family come together. But it's like you're always trying not to say something, or there's mother-in-law who says something to you and you have to not react. And it's the hardest thing. For an hour it's hard. But you're there for a number of days. And it, you know, it's so hard. And afterwards, you go home and it's, wow, we've been through something. That visit was something. That family visit. And you go to your husband's relatives and it feels you're there for 3 days, and the first day you don't know, you know, I need. It brings you to God, really. So at the end of the day, they're all going home. Duryodhana says, no, we must have one more game, and this time it will be the loser goes to exile for 14 years. They bring them back. Yudhishthira has to come back because the blind king is influenced by his son. Comes back, one more game, and they have to go into exile for 14 years. So this time they leave again, but this time they have to go to the forest for 14 years. And Duryodhana, in his mind, he thinks 14 years is an eternity. He's won the kingdom forever through trickery. But Yudhishthira, so Drupadi and Arjuna and Bhima, all the other brothers, they say, let's just go back and fight them. You know, they're so angry. But Yudhishthira, he says, no, this is our duty now. We've followed our dharma. You know, now we must. He says it may come that we may have to fight them. He says it may come, but now isn't the time. Now we have to do this 14 years in the forest. So great. Anyway, thanks for coming this afternoon. Sorry, it's a really, really long story. It's difficult to get it. But maybe you can understand it, because it's all in English, isn't it?
Yes, thank you so much for bringing us into the world of the first chapter. But it's beautiful. So I think it does not happen often that we all have tears in listening to a story which is in a way known, but which is being made so alive by the way you were telling it. It's a living story in you. It's so alive in you, and you're bringing it alive in our mind and heart as well. So thank you so much for that. And it's great that it's been filmed, and that the other people of the team also can enjoy, and you can take it very, very well. Please come back. Please come back.
Or do it somewhere else, and then send us the film.
Yeah.
And the other people get the
That's
first-hand experience, and then.
This is part number 1, and wherever you are, part number 2, we'll
do part 18.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. It's okay if you say it in very clear vertrouwd.
Sri
some of the beauty and wisdom has come through. It's a great story, and it's sort of timeless in a way. It's not just facts and information or something interesting. It's something that it mirrors ourselves somehow, and you know what happened to them happens to us in different ways, and the answers they had are the same answers. And like I say, something in it comes alive. I hope I've portrayed some of that. To me it feels really alive. You know, I can be out walking by myself. And that's it really, you know, so often we spend our lives, and you know, when the great sages say, when you're really living, you know, it's like Siddhartha had 2 lives. One life as a prince, very rich, everything everyone would want. He's in a beautiful environment, he's a king, he's got a beautiful wife, he's got everything any person in this world would want. But really he didn't truly live until he realised, then that's it. It's finding that connection, you know, as we can spend our days. The universe presents us with beautiful techniques and everything, but it's up to us somehow to make that connection. And it's easy not to have urgency, because you think, I've got so much time. You know, like Duryodhana thought, I got the kingdom for 14 years. Feels like an eternity, but he still ends up here. You know, same with us, we think. But every day, what the wise people say, because they can see it, Yudhishthira says, everyone says, that time is so precious, because it goes so quickly. Before you know it, you're older, you know, your body changes, you feel time goes so quickly. And that's if the universe is merciful and gives us lots of time. So here's the Wi-Fi, and I go out walking and I just can think of the stories, and it just comes alive. Somewhere this still exists. And you can, you know, the veil between us and the world, beautiful world, spiritual world, it's just like a veil. You know, and so we're just this side of the veil. It's a great teacher called Ramakrishna from India. Ramakrishna, Ramana Maharishi, great teachers from the early part of the 1900s or late part of the 1800s. Very beautiful wisdom, you know. And when Ramakrishna, you know, he was on his deathbed, he had cancer. He knew he was going to die. And everyone around him was very upset. He says, don't worry, I'm just like behind the veil. I'm still here. I'm just next to you. Same